Welcome back. In the previous video, I gave you the bare forms of three common verbs. So we have walk, arrive, and jump. And we turned those bare forms into the other six forms. Walk to walk, walk, walks, walked, walked, walking. Arrive to arrive, arrive, arrives, arrived, arrived, arriving. Jump to jump, jump, jumps, jump, jump, jumping. I've rewritten those a little more neatly this time in this table here in blue. After doing that, we identified the rule that English uses to turn the bare forms here into the other verb forms. And I've also rewritten that rule a little bit more neatly here on the fourth column in red. Now, once we had done that, we identified three questions that often come up when students study this chart. Number one, don't some verbs break this rule? Number two, what is the difference between the preterite and past participle verb forms, since they look pretty much the same and they're made the same way according to the rule? Number three, what is the difference between the bare and simple verb forms? Since again, they seem to be the same according to the rule and they're written the same. What's the difference? Why are these considered different forms and why are these considered different forms? Why don't we just combine them? In this video, I will attempt to answer these first two questions for you. So the answer to the first question is that yes, there are verbs that break this rule. The verbs that break this rule are called the irregular verbs. And the verbs that follow the rule, well, those are called the regular verbs. So we have regular verbs and irregular verbs. So to better understand these irregular verbs, let's look at a few examples, starting with the verb eat, which is a verb we all know and which is very familiar. So the bare form of the verb eat is just eat. The infinitive form is to eat. The simple form is eat. The simple third person form is eats. Okay, so far so good. The verb is still following the rule for making the bare form into the infinitive form, making the bare form into the simple form, and making the bare form into the simple third person form. But now it's going to begin to diverge. So if eat was a regular verb, the preterite form would be eated, right? That's the rule. The bare form is eat, add an ed, and you would get eated. But this is incorrect. The preterite form of eat is ate. Likewise, the past participle of eat would also be eated if we were following the rule, but the past participle of eat is actually eaten. Let's clean it up a bit here. Finally, the present participle eating does follow the rule again. So we have this irregular verb that follows the rule in 5 of the 7 verb forms. The bare, infinitive, simple, third person, and present participle, but breaks the rule in the preterite and past participle verb forms. All right, to get a better sense of these irregular verbs, let's look at another one, the verb drive. Now, the bare form of the verb is drive. That means that the infinitive form would be to drive. The simple form would be drive. The simple third person would be drives. And then again, when we get to the preterite, we run into trouble and the verb stops following the rule. If the verb followed the rule, and drive was a regular verb, then the preterite would be drived. But that is incorrect. The preterite form of the verb drive is drove. Likewise, if drive followed the rule, the past participle verb form would be drived, but it is not. It is driven. Again, let me clean that up a bit. So this verb, again, breaks the rule when you get to the preterite and past participle verb forms, but it does follow the rule once more once you get to the present participle, because the present participle of drive is driving. Okay, I think you guys are beginning to see a pattern here in when the irregular verbs follow the rule and when they break it. But just to make it super clear, let's do one more example. For our third example, we will consider the irregular verb speak. All right, if the bare form is speak, then the infinitive form is to speak. The simple form is speak. The third person is speaks. But again, once we get to the preterite, it stops following the rule. If it followed the rule, the preterite form would be speaked, but it is spoke. Likewise, the past participle would also be speaked, but it is spoken. Again, let me clean that up a bit. And finally, the present participle verb form is speaking. It follows the rule once again. So now that we've seen 3 examples of irregular verbs, let's zoom out a little bit and try to think about patterns. It seems clear that the regular verbs always follow the rule. That's what defines a verb as regular. Regular verbs always follow the rule. That is really the definition of what a regular verb is. But irregular verbs break this rule. However, do irregular verbs actually break the rule everywhere? Let's look. Well, the bare form is just the bare form, so you can't really break that because that's the root form. To make the bare into the infinitive, they just added to the bare form, so they're still following the rule there. The simple form and the bare form are the same, so they follow the rule there. They also follow the rule by adding an S to the bare form to make the third person. It's only when you get to the preterite form that they actually break the rule. Likewise, at the past participle, they break the rule. But then, in the present participle, they start following the rule again. They really only break the rule for the preterite and past participle verb forms. This is the only place where irregular verbs break the rule. This is useful to know because it helps us focus our studies. If I teach you a new regular verb, you don't need to sit around memorizing 7 forms, because as long as you know the rule and you memorize the bare form, then you can just use the rule to make all the other forms. But if I teach you a new irregular verb, you only need to memorize 3 forms: the bare form, the preterite form, and the past participle form. Because for the other 4 forms, infinitive, simple, third person, and present participle, you can still use the rule. So when you learn a new regular verb, as long as you know the rule, you just need to memorize 1 form. When you learn a new irregular verb, you need to memorize 3. Now we can go back and answer 2 of our 3 questions. Question 1, do some verbs break the rule? Yes. The irregular verbs break the rule. Question number 2, what is the difference between the preterite and past participle verb forms? Well, in the regular verbs, they are written the same, but in the irregular verbs, they are often different. Because irregular verbs exist, we have to distinguish between these 2 forms. If English had no irregular verbs, we could just combine them. Now, I want to leave you with a final question. We know irregular verbs break the rule in 2 places, the preterite and the past participle. But are there any irregular verbs that break the rule in more than 2 places? Are there any so-called super irregular verbs? Well, think about it. We will answer that question in the next video.